Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Science Friday's Virtual Trivia Nights. I'm so excited that you all are here. Well, happy Wednesday, as per usual. If you don't know Science Friday, we are your one-stop shop for all things science news, and you can find out all about us, sciencefriday.com. We do all kinds of really cool stuff. You'll probably best know us for our weekly radio show, which happens, you guessed it, on Fridays, 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern. But we also, on sciencefriday.com, have videos. We've got digital articles, we've got educational resources, we've got virtual events like this one, and also in-person events coming up this June, by the way. If you didn't see, we dropped all of the Cephalopod Week events that are happening in June. But we're going to talk more about that later because we got other stuff to talk about today. It's Dino Night, everybody. I'm so excited that you all are here because we're going to be talking about dinosaurs and other ancient creatures basically for the next hour and a half. I'm very excited about it. I'm going to introduce on our special guest very soon. But for right now, in the chat, I asked you, what is your favorite dinosaur or ancient creature? As per usual, we always get one person who says that their favorite dinosaur is a chicken. Agreed. Yeah. Because birds are technically dinosaurs. So very smart. I like it very much. The king, T-Rex. Everybody loves T-Rex. Isabel, you're very smart also in that you use T.Rex because I've used a dash before and people get very upset. So you don't want to upset the dinosaur people. Pterodactyls are also pretty cool. Technically not dinosaurs, I learned, but they are, pretty cool ancient animals anyway. So keep letting us know in the chat what your favorite dinosaur is. By the way, we all have to say congratulations in the chat to Juliana, by the way, who is here somehow because she just ran a trivia night with students at her school. So that's pretty cool. Thank you for being here, Juliana, and congratulations. I want to hear all about it later. All right, before we do that, though, I have to tell you how this is going to work. So let us talk about how Science Friday Trivia works. We're going to play 3 rounds of trivia. It's going to take about 90 minutes, maybe a little bit more because I talk a little bit more when we have our special guests on. You are going to put your scores, or rather your answers, in the answer forums. So I'm going to put those in the chat right now. There's one round for every one form for every round, and that is where you're going to put your answers. You don't have to play along if you don't want to. If you just want to learn great stuff about dinosaurs and other ancient creatures, you can also do that. But if you're going to answer the trivia questions, that is the place to put your answers. The form goes into a sheet which is auto scoring. So I have told the sheet what the correct answers are. And so your best bet in getting the answer right is to keep your answer simple. Usually you don't need a or the or other articles as part of the answer. But try your best with spelling. Usually spelling doesn't count. If you're close enough, that's usually good enough for me. I'm not a great speller. And so as long as you're close and I know what you're trying to say, usually you'll get the answer right. So do your best just to keep your answers as simple as possible. That is the best way to get the answer right, but I do double check the answers at the end of the round. The rounds are pretty quick, but I do list the questions at the end of each round. So if you need another look before you actually submit your forums after question 5, you should wait around for the questions at the end of the round. You can chat with us. You can go over to the right-hand side and sign into YouTube, and that way you can chat with us. The live stream is also just a little bit delayed, so wait for me. If you ask me a question, it'll just take me a little bit of time to see it because I am 20 seconds into the future. All right. What should you do now? So if you are playing with a team, you should assign the team captain. This is the person who is going to open all the answer forms and actually answer for your team. Captain, whoever that is, you should open all the answer forms now, decide on a team name if you have not done so already, or if you've played with us before, use the same team name. And the captain, you should use the same name on all of those forms tonight because my form is smart, but it cannot tell the difference between 2 team names spelled almost exactly the same. It will give you 2 different scores for 2 different teams, and you don't want that. So make sure I would just write it once and then copy paste it into all of the forms. That is the best way to make it happen. What are the rules? There's really only 2 rules. Don't look up the answers online. It's going to be kind of hard anyway. And not to like challenge you or anything, but we did pull a lot of these from Riley's new book, so it's going to be a little bit harder to find them online. But these are all facts that you could, if you really were determined to look them up. Please don't. I will not be able to tell if you cheated, but I don't want you to go to sleep at night feeling bad that you cheated and then won. That's just not what I want for you. And the other rule is just be kind in the chat. What does that look like? You can see people being kind in the chat right now. Friendly greetings, not putting the answers in the chat, questions or noticings, just that kind of stuff. Things that you would, do at a nice gathering of friends or people you haven't met yet. The other thing that you can do is just try your best. That's really all I ask. And if you are not on our email list yet, you can sign up for it. I put the link in the chat. If there's something that I can do to make trivia safer, more fun, or generally a more better experience, just send me an email, and I will do my best to do that. There are 2 upcoming trivia nights, by the way. We're going for full herpetology with Dr. Emily Taylor from Cal Poly in a couple weeks. That's at the end of May. And then at the end of June, we're celebrating Cephalopod Week. We're extending it just a little bit because Cephalopod Week is officially from June 10th to June 17th. But we are doing, on the 22nd of June, we're doing another Cephalopod week not movie night, trivia night. I'm really excited for that. We're bringing back Diana Lee. It is going to be super fun. 2 Dianas, twice the amount of trivia. What do you win? Y'all, I'm so excited. So you're going to meet our special guest in just a moment, but the thing you will win is a copy of her new book, The Last Days of the Dinosaurs, and I'm going to throw in some Science Friday swag. I'll send a shirt, I'll send some stickers, I'll send you maybe some other stuff. I got a lot of stuff in my closet. Plus, I will send you one of these little trivia excellence certificates with your team name and the date that you won trivia. I will include that, and you can use as a bookmark for your favorite new book. So, very excited about that. It's going to be awesome. I'm really excited for you all to read this book if you have not done so already. If you already read it, you are a speed reader because the book came out yesterday. So, all right, that's enough of me. We're going to welcome on our special guest. So please, in the chat, a round of applause for our very special guest tonight, Riley Black.
Hi.
Hello.
It's good to be on.
Oh my gosh, it is so nice to see you. I've just been talking and talking, and now it's your turn. Tell us a little bit about your new book, The Last Days of the Dinosaurs. Why the last days? Why did you want to write about this very specific time in the history of Earth and dinosaurs?
Well, as we know, it's not quite the last days. I've already had a few people on Twitter say, but how could you say that when there are birds? Of course, birds are dinosaurs, and they're still around. But these are the age of dinosaurs, the last days of it. And we're always fascinated by it, right? There have been so many different ideas about what took out T-Rex and Triceratops and all our favorites. So what I really wanted to do was dig into that, pun very much intended, but really get into the story of how that played out. It's not as simple as big rock hits Earth, extinction happens. It was really incredibly unexpected, incredibly violent in some ways, but it's really a story of resilience. This is not so much the end of the dinosaurs, the beginning of so much that we see around us now. So it's, the dinosaurs are certainly in there, but I really want to unpack what happened in the minute, the hour, the day, the week, the month after that impact. So that's really what the book is about.
That's amazing. I love the way you just phrased that. It wasn't just, it wasn't an end. It was really a beginning in a lot of ways. And I'm going to take that with me to whatever end sort of awaits for humanity. Maybe, hopefully not this kind of end, but we really will see.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. There's so many things that we see around us. This is a little bit of a spoiler. Hopefully not too much of a huge one. I mean, you can find these things at the supermarket, but whenever you go to get a can of refried beans or whatever beans you prefer, that is a kind of plant that evolved directly in the aftermath of the KPG extinction that ended the age of dinosaurs. That it didn't exist before. So in this kind of world that's flourishing in that million years directly after, there's so many things that we can basically take something that's very familiar and draw it back that event. And that's what I think is so amazing, that it's 66 million years later, but we can see so many of these little threads that we can follow back to this one moment in time.
I love that. Oh, it's it does make me want to go digging around in the dirt a little bit more than maybe I did a couple days ago. So I kind of hope that everyone leaves feeling a little bit like that too. I'm going to go dig around and see what I can find.
Oh, there's so much, and there's more all the time. I mean, my career is as a science journalist and as a science writer. It's so hard to keep on top of just all the amazing new research that's coming
Mhm.
out, even just about this particular event. It was something that had me biting my nails a little bit, like, because there's about 9 months between the time I finish
Yeah.
the book and the time it comes out. It's like, please don't contradict the thesis of my book. And thankfully, it's
Yeah.
still holding true. But yeah, there's just so much, just so many connections that you can just draw back to that moment.
That's amazing. Yeah. All right. What do you say? Are you ready to get into some trivia?
Oh, I'm ready. I'm so excited for this.
Me too. I've never been more ready in my entire life, so let's do it. All right, so the first round is all about the end of the world. So the end of the world as maybe the ancient dinosaurs know it, not so much the end of the entire world. But yeah, we're gonna these questions are really surrounding sort of that moment, the first few years, the years before the big giant meteor hit Earth, and it changed everything. So let us start where we always do with question number one. Here we go. I'm also going to drop the round answer form in the chat. So if anyone needs it, that is where it is for you. All right, with question number one, we always start. The disaster has been known by different names in the past. Sometimes it's called the End Cretaceous Mass Extinction, and for years it was called the Cretaceous Tertiary Mass Extinction, and that sort of marked the end of the Age of Reptiles. That title was later revised according to the rules of geological arcana, one last time to the term we use now, which is shortened to what three-letter abbreviation? I don't know much about geological arcana or any kind of like, I barely understand like binomial nomenclature when it comes to like naming animals. Um, is this just kind of like whatever's in like like before we had the
Mhm.
actual rules? Was it just like whatever was in fashion was the words that they used?
Well, many of these terms, like, they relate back to specific geological formations
Hmm,
in a
hmm.
sense. So like Cretaceous, that basically means like full of chalk. So this is based upon like chalk
I love
filled
that.
formations that were in certain parts of the world.
That's
And in
cool.
terms of like other names like tertiary, that refers to like a certain organization of time periods. And sometimes you have duplicates of certain letters or terms that you
Hmm.
can't duplicate all over again. So it's like all these little like rules and, like you said, arcana that like exist about like how do we make sense of this given our actual quite limited language to describe these things.
Yeah, exactly. By the way, everyone, if you have any questions for Riley as we are presenting you with these trivia questions of our own, feel free to ask them in the chat. She and I are available. Of course, Riley knows much more about this than I do. I've read her book, but you wrote it. And so I'm sure you have a lot of knowledge in your brain about dinosaurs. Someone's going to ask you this, but I'm gonna ask it first. Do you have a favorite dinosaur?
Goodness. I mean, my favorite prehistoric one, or I shouldn't even say prehistoric because that counts 66 million years that have
Yeah.
passed as well. My favorite, like Mesozoic, like age of dinosaurs one
Hmm.
is probably Allosaurus. So that's our state fossil here in Utah. So it's like a carnivore that could get T Rex size. It looked a little bit different, had these
Hmm.
really neat, like, brow horns in front of its eyes. And we have so many of them. There's a fossil site that I work at each summer where we have the remains of at least 48, probably actually hundreds, but the
Wow.
minimum is 48 in one place. And we don't know a ton about its biology. So, like, I love that it's this very familiar classic animal that's also something of a mystery. But in terms of like, if here's the secret, my actual like super favorite dinosaur is a magpie. I actually go up to the gardens
Ah!
here in town about once a week to go watch them because they're just hilarious. And they look like little, basically like velociraptors in tuxedos. And they're
That's
just
awesome.
so charming.
I really like God, there are just so many really cool birds. I still really love flamingos. I mean, they just have such they look so dainty, but they are
Mm-hmm.
like they live in some of the like harshest environments and they like just eat crud and drink bad water and it's just like amazing what
And
they
turn
like kind
pink.
of live through. Yeah, they're really pretty cool.
Well, what's neat
Um
about those, it's not a dinosaur, but we have a pterosaur, so a dinosaur cousin, like one of the flying reptiles called
mhm.
pterodastro from South America, that we think it was probably pink like a flamingo because it's the only like filter feeding
Oh,
pterosaur that we know of.
cool.
It has a jaw that has all the same kind of like bristles in it, so we think that it probably was feeding in like the same kind of way and was also bright pink. So flamingos have helped us understand the fossil record a little better too.
That is so cool. Oh, that's amazing. All right, we're going to move swiftly along to question number 2. And Riley, if you wouldn't mind reading this one for us.
Sure. Experts have often spoken of this most well known of mass extinction events, the one that killed the charismatic dinosaurs as part of the Big Five, a quintet of events that have radically altered life's history. The first extinction crisis reshaped the oceans, erasing entire families of archaic invertebrate weirdos and allowing fish to thrive. Approximately when did that first extinction event on Earth that we can confirm occur? A, 500 to 470 million years ago. B, 455 to 430 million years ago. C, 375 to 360 million years ago. Or D, 250 to 255 million years ago.
I want to clarify that I wrote the word weirdos, and so I
Yeah.
don't want that to come back on you, Riley, that you
Oh no,
wrote
I
this
mean
question.
I try and be sensitive about that in a sense because they are weird. They are like wonderful. And I think that's a term of endearment. Like I grew up
It
watching
really
the
is.
Muppets, like weirdo, like Gonzo and stuff, like my favorite. Like a
Yes,
weirdo is a wonderful term. But at the same time, like to these things, like we're weirdos. And we actually are pretty
totally.
weird compared to all other forms of life on Earth. So
Got
it's
all
one of
these
those
weird
things.
arms and
Yeah.
legs. It just doesn't make a lot of sense. Our heads are
We
too
don't
big. There's all
Yeah,
this
we
stuff
don't
in
have
the
sharp
middle.
teeth. We don't have claws. We're mostly like not hairless, but it's very sparse. We're walking in a weird way when we don't have a tail. Like it's so strange.
When you lay it all like that,
Yeah.
yeah, it does sound weird. We're not very good at defending ourselves. We've just, we decided to drill into the earth instead of doing a lot of fighting. I feel like that's just the
Yeah.
biggest difference.
We just went all in on the brain pan, really.
Yeah,
Like
we really did. I kind of wish we'd maybe invested a little bit more in tails because you're right.
yeah.
I think that would have been cool, or maybe the ability to like breathe in different environments a little bit differently. I
Mhm.
would love to be able to breathe underwater. That would be
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Well, I feel like I'm telling on myself a little bit like wearing leopard print during this. It's like some patterns would be nice.
Some patterns would be
Yeah.
nice. Yeah, the ability to like change your texture or your color just a little bit,
Oh
that
my
would be
goodness.
super cool.
I mean, cephalopod envy is a real thing.
Yes, I try my best not to write every week around about cephalopods because I feel like I could do it. There's just so much to know. But instead I just push it all to cephalopod week and I just do
Yes.
all of my nerding out then. All right,
Celebrate their catalog the whole year round.
honestly, I wouldn't put it past me. All right, team. So we're going to move on to question number 3. So experts have proposed many different reasons for the disaster that ended the age of dinosaurs. We talked a little bit about them today, but different researchers have proposed everything from volcanic activity to hungry caterpillars as explanations for the catastrophe. But the best supported culprit is an immense asteroid that struck the Earth. What is the name of the crater made by that impact? So I will give you one hint. It is near the Americas, and that's all you get. We need the name of the crater that was made by that impact of that asteroid that made today possible. I really like thinking of it that way. It's sort of like made today actually possible, and you don't have to really think too much about how T Rex didn't maybe make it through.
Yeah, it's so strange in that like I would love to see these animals in the flesh, like to see them,
Mhm.
alive the way that I love to imagine them. But if they were here, I probably wouldn't be. So it's sort of I don't know if there's a word for like the emotion that this is,
Yeah.
other than maybe like bittersweet. I wish I could remember it. A friend of mine suggested one. I think it was in Dutch that's like a similar sentiment. But yeah, it's this weird inflection point that we just keep going back to.
Yeah, totally. And it's also remembering that the last time, even in a fictitious world, that someone tried to make exactly what you're describing a reality, it didn't go well for the Jurassic Park people. And so
No.
I try to imagine that maybe we learned something from that movie. It's like maybe it's not a good idea. But I still hear about researchers, I think less of like trying to bring back a woolly mammoth and more just like
Mhm.
constructing its DNA. But even that, I'm like, I just feel like if that information got into the wrong, very rich hands, that we maybe would be walking around with a lot of woolly mammoths in a way that would be unproductive for either of us. So,
Yeah, it's kind of a whole other kettle of fish, but that's something where like an organism isn't just its DNA, right? Like
mhm,
especially something
mhm.
like a mammoth, we know modern day elephants, they need to be taught. by their mothers and by their parents, or all these
Yeah.
behaviors they don't otherwise learn. So it's like you can't just kind of like, okay, we fully sequenced the mammoth genome and
Go
now we have
forth.
a mammoth. Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So it's like we've made something, it's like imitation mammoth, where it's like, maybe like I know there are fans, like imitation crab meat, like I'm sure there are fans, but you
Sure.
can't call it the real thing.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting, actually. I never thought of it that way, that even really a mammoth, if we were to completely bring back a mammoth, here it is, mammoth. Is it really a mammoth? And there's not really a way for us to know that. Oh, yeah,
Right.
now I've got that weird sort of bittersweet feeling in the back of my head. So I'm going to soothe it by asking another trivia question. But actually, Riley, I'm going to ask you
Mhm.
to ask this question.
Before and after the event that ended the age of dinosaurs, there were intense volcanic eruptions in what's now India. All told, the outpouring of magma covered about 600,000 square miles. What is the name of this volcanic field?
I'm excited to ask you more during the answers portion of
Mhm.
this about this specifically, because I didn't know much about this area before you helped write this question. But I do want to mention that Tao asked the question, could dinosaurs have developed agriculture? Before I actually ask you to sort of maybe pontificate on this a little bit,
Yeah.
Dr. Cordate did say a T Rex couldn't hold a hoe, so maybe not. But what do you
Which
think?
is fair because, yeah, I mean, we often do like the bunny hands thing for velociraptors, right? But we know that they held their basically hands like this, that they're clappers and not slappers.
Yeah.
So, absolutely right on that count. I mean, there's been a lot of debates about dinosaurs and their relationship to plants. For example,
Mhm.
there was a paper that came out, I think in the 80s, like, did dinosaurs invent flowers? More or less, like not intentionally, but just through evolutionary interactions. Did
Wow.
flowering plants come up because of this? It's probably not. They were interacting obviously with vegetation throughout their entire history,
Mhm.
but in terms of like cultivating crops or things like that, we don't see any evidence of that. But there is a really neat project. Mimo Kosman is the name of the artist. Back in the 80s, another 80s dino thing when Dinomania was at its peak,
Mhm.
there's this idea of the dinosauroid, like an anthropomorphic dinosaur descendant. That was like, if dinosaurs were as smart as we are, at least as self-aware as we
Mm.
are, what would they be like? And this was a modern take on it. So Mimo's work basically took something like a velociraptor and said, okay, given 66 million years, what would they look like if they were like us? Like they'd probably have to hold like sticks in their mouths to like do their cave paintings or other things like that. So like it's entirely in the realm of basically speculative biology, but it's a
Yeah.
really neat project to look up because it relates a lot to birds like corvids, like New Caledonian
Mm.
crows and things like
Mhm.
that. So it's like it's trying to do the things we do, but with an entirely different anatomy.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I really do wonder how they would move around in the world. They probably have better I just get this sense that they would have better public transit. I don't know why, but I just feel like they would value it more than we do maybe right now. But it's just really
Probably.
hard to move through the earth when you're that big and that small. Like there's just such a big range. You might as well just offer one big bus for everybody.
And there'd be all kinds of like, cosmetic treatments, I'm sure, for like feather lice and things like that. So
Oh,
it's like we could take
interesting.
this far, I'm sure.
Oh, that is very interesting. Yeah. Oh, I feel like we just started like imagining a whole other world. Wait, can you tell me this artist's name again?
So is it Memo, Memo,
Uh-huh.
and I think the last name is Kosman's, Koseman. I think it's
Awesome.
correct. So if you just look up like that name and Dinosauroid, it should take you to like the relevant art.
I'm going to spend a lot of time with that, I think. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing.
Of course.
All right, last question of the round, my friends. We are moving on to question 5. So, dinosaurs have a very long history dating back to over 235 million years ago. Their history was dramatically affected by mass extinctions. How many mass extinctions have dinosaurs survived? So, for this one, we're looking for a number. I'm looking for the number on the dot. So, I will not accept, sometimes I do accept numbers plus or minus, but for this one, my friends, you must be on the money. So tell me, how many mass extinctions have dinosaurs survived? Riley, tell us a
Yeah.
little bit about, was there a moment where you kind of imagined this book and then it kind of blossomed from there? I feel like I hear a lot of stories of people writing books that have this sort of timeline, sort of like, because your book kind of starts before and then the day and then goes to a few million years after this happens. What was your inspiration for sort of like situating the book in that timeline function?
Yeah, some of that was the recent discoveries that we've been making in terms of figuring out the timeline, that we
Mm.
could say something about what happened in that moment and in the first 24 hours. There's a great paper called Survival in the First Hours of the Cenozoic
Mm.
that formed a lot of the background for this. It really struck me with like how swift and how unprecedented this extinction was. But in terms of the theme overall, it's been something I was kicking around for a little while because, you know, we're always talking about this extinction, why it happened. And it was actually something personal. Like I went through a lot of personal changes. I went through a divorce and I came out about 3 years ago around the time that I was thinking about this idea. And it felt very much on a personal scale of my life was very much one way one day, and the next day it was entirely different. And it went through a lot of difficult moments, but it was really a story of resilience and trying to thrive in the wake of that. And I related a lot to those little snuffly little mammals
Hmm.
that, you know, eventually came up from this mass extinction. So it was really that personal connection that kept driving me to learn more about this and make it a little bit of a personal metaphor. So once I had that, it was really just like, okay, how do I piece this out in a way that can really like bring some of the most relevant information into this story?
That's amazing. I am always so surprised because I feel like my my work feels very disconnected from the things that are happening around me. I know that they're not, but I love when someone can like so intentionally be like, here's what I was going through and here's how that affected the thing that you're holding in your hands, the book that I made. I love that. And I can't wait for everyone who hasn't read the book. I'm going to keep saying it. Read the book, get the book, but who hasn't read it to sort of have that knowledge going into it and feeling like they have a maybe a little bit of a different perspective.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of a little like decoder ring that
Yeah.
once you know that piece, it reads in a different way.
Yeah, I love that. All right, teams, we have made it to the end of round one, bittersweet as it is. We're going to give you a minute and a half to finalize your answers and put them in the form if you have not submitted them already. We're going to play some music. You're going to do that, and we'll see you in a minute and a half. All right, teams, that is the end of round one. The questions will go away in 3, 2, 1. Yay, they are gone. That's the end of round one. If you have not submitted your questions, now is 100% the time you need to do that because I need to go score. And while I am scoring, Riley, you and our teams are going to be able to enjoy a range of Science Friday videos all about dinosaurs. We have a rerun for Science Friday trivia fans of the past. I've shown this video before, but I had to show again. It's all about coprolites. So enjoy that. I'll see you all back here in about 3.5 minutes. Have fun.
There doesn't seem to be much to find out on the prairie near Choteau, Montana. But for paleontologists like Corey Coverdale, this is hallowed ground.
So this area is famous for its spectacular preservation of baby dinosaurs, eggs, and those sorts of things. We are very well known among paleontologists, and there are a lot of people who have come and studied here.
In fact, the discovery that dinosaurs cared for their young was made in these hills.
The very first baby dinosaurs found in a nest anywhere in the world were discovered here.
And so researchers continue to search outcroppings in the hope of making a big discovery.
They're looking for skeletons, for baby bones especially.
But some scientists are seeking treasure of a different variety. Fossilized poop.
These little magic packages can provide really special perspectives on ancient life. My name is Karen Chin, and I study ancient ecosystems. And to do that, I often look at fossilized feces.
Technically known as a coprolite.
So skeletal fossils, they don't always tell you too much about the behavior of animals. Whereas if you look at fossil feces, they are a byproduct of feeding activity of an animal. But in addition to diet, they can also tell you about what organisms might have been living along with the animal that defecated. And coprolites can also tell you about the conditions under which they were preserved. As such, they give us a totally different perspective on an ancient environment than we get from the bones.
Sadly, these fecal fortunes are far more rare than skeletal bones.
It's a little bit paradoxical that an animal only died once in its lifetime, but it defecated gazillions of times. But even so, coprolites from terrestrial animals are much rarer than their skeletal fossils.
Their scarcity has a lot to do with how fossils are formed.
Most fossils are preserved when they are buried rapidly. That is often a flood event or some landslide. But in addition to that, you have to have some mineralizing agent.
Like phosphorus or calcium from the bones and tissues of a carnivorous dinosaur's prey.
But if you take dung from herbivorous animals, in order to preserve those, you actually need an external source of a mineral. Paradoxically, that comes from the bacteria that are feeding on fossil dung. Their metabolic activities can cause minerals to precipitate out.
In either case, the resulting coprolites can be incredibly difficult to identify.
Fossil feces can have many different colors. It can be pancake, they can be bulbous, they can be sausage-shaped, and we have to look at several different techniques to try and determine if it is fossil feces or just a pretty rock.
Once she's fairly certain she's got the real deal, Dr. Chin can begin to investigate its origins.
You don't know who the perpetrator was, right? I will first see if I can see anything recognizable on the surface, such as dietary residues or burrows from organism that burrowed in after it was deposited. I may make a thin section of it. I cut out a little piece and then I grind that down so you can see through it. Again, it's almost like you're in the field. You're like searching around the slide. Oh, what is that?
Poopatrator. It's just like, it was just there. I love it. All right, we're going to bring Riley back to the stream. Hello. So that was just the first half of the video, by the way. You'll be able to enjoy the second half and see the end result at the end after round 2. So I'm looking forward to it as well. All right, so we've got some incredibly smart people here tonight who did their best and are coming out with a lot of points. And some people who, as I like to say, are learning a lot today, are winning the award for the person who learned the most. So I'm looking forward to all sides of it. But y'all did pretty great. I'm really proud of how much you are paying attention or how quick of readers you are, because Riley's book came out yesterday, so you never know. All right, so here are the answers. We asked first about the 3-letter abbreviation that we use to talk about this sort of end time. KPG, if you were listening closely at the beginning of our trivia night, we may or may not have said that. And that's why I always tell you to listen closely, because you really never know. That's what we do usually for our third round of trivia, by the way, Riley. I ask everyone to listen to Science Friday the week before, and then I just do trivia rounds that are just like, did you listen really good? Did you hear that number that we said? So I'm very glad that people are good listeners. So many people were so close. We had a lot of CPGs, Although I did like one person who didn't know the answer, and so they wrote END. End. Love it. Very creative answer. So congratulations to those teams. For question 2, we asked about approximately when did the first extinction event that we know of, right, that we have, that we can point to with evidence and say, like, we're pretty sure that happened then. It was about 455 to 430 million years ago. That one was pretty bad for, like, ocean. Was that the one that was, like, really, really bad for ocean creatures, right? Like,
That's right. Yeah,
not
because there
good.
wasn't no vertebrates on land quite
Yeah.
yet. So yeah, that was an oceanic extinction.
Yeah. Too bad for them. But we've got hopefully a lot of things kicking around in the ocean. We have like the whales are like the largest animals that have ever existed on Earth. Is that right? So we still
That's
live
right.
amongst giants, everybody. So there's still some pretty cool stuff here. I asked you for the name of the crater that made the impact, or that was made by the impact of this giant asteroid that struck Earth. Chicxulub. If you spelled it like this, I'm grateful. If you spelled it anything like this, I gave you the point. Lots of O's where there should be U's, E's at the end of words. You were very close. I appreciate you trying. So if you wrote anything like this, although I did like, again, some teams wrote some creative answers. Huge hole. I liked that one. Steve, another good contender. You did pretty good, but and super big hole. Yeah, grand crater. There were a lot of good ones. So if anyone's looking for a name for another crater, that's a good place to look. Then we asked about this magma that outpoured over 600,000 square miles in what's now India. And it's called the Deccan Traps. Can you tell us a little bit about this area? Why is it so cool and important?
Well, for a while, it was a contender for what caused the extinction at the end of the Cretaceous. So it was like the biggest competitor to the asteroid because we had these eruptions happening before, and we kind of had them happening after. And we know big eruptions in the past caused some of these major mass extinctions. And it turns out there's a paper that came out about a year or so ago that suggests that during the impact winter that followed that asteroid impact, that the traps poured out so much greenhouse gas that basically mitigated it. So it kept things from being as bad as they otherwise would have been. So while volcanoes were really bad in the past, they actually probably helped life survive during the Cretaceous crisis.
That's pretty cool. I love that. Thank you, volcanoes, for helping out. Garrison says that Deccan Traps is definitely something from Star Wars. Yeah, I definitely feel like Star Wars was, inspired by a lot of the words that paleontologists have used in the past to name cool places.
Sounds like a good bar.
It does, actually. Yes. I'm going to write that down for the name. It's like I've got, of course, a band name list, and now I'll when I inevitably start my nerdy bar, Deccan Traps is pretty good, actually. Yeah. All right, and then we asked you, how many mass extinctions have dinosaurs survived? The answer may surprise you, but it's 2, because we are counting the 166 million years ago that killed most of the dinosaurs, but some of them did exist, and they are birds. And so we did count that mass extinction as one that dinosaurs have survived. I'm sorry if that felt tricksy to everyone. We had a lot of 1s, and we had a lot of 3s as well. Why exactly is it 2, Riley?
So there's the mass extinction that occurred at the end of the Triassic and the beginning of the Jurassic and divides that time period. So that was another big volcanic one that happened around 201 million years ago. And then, like you just said, we're counting the one that happened 66 million years ago because birds survived. So those are the 2 ones. And that's what I kind of love about it. It's like they're bookends. So dinosaurs like evolved. They're kind of on the sidelines. This mass extinction at the end of the Triassic lets them kind of proliferate. And then they got almost knocked out. They got decimated by the 166 million years ago. So it's these 2 neat little before and after mass extinctions that are really important to their story.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, a little bookend. They survived, and then they did survive, but like you said, now they're crows and chickens and all the birds that we see today on our Earth. All right, teams, we are at the end of round 1, and so my job now is to tell you the scores. Here are the top scoring teams, the top 10 scoring teams. I will say there's usually a lot of 3s and 2s on this list, but this time it's all 5s and 4s. So people have brought their dinosaur brains. All right, so I am going to read from the bottom of the list. I'm going to read everyone's scores. All right, here are the teams that are doing their best. Maybe didn't get any yet, but there's still 2 more rounds. Those teams are Trace Cabezas, Snake River Snakes, Play-Doh Fries, Magnificent Manatees, Humps, Hippies, Greek God of Revelry, Dr. Corday, and Bulldogs Need Love Too. No points yet, but that's okay. With 1 point so far, the Rosy Thorns, Sweltering Swifts, Sci-Fam, Samurai Fox, Pinchy, Munchkinhausen by proxy, Library Scientist, Just Me McGee, Freehold, New Jersey, Family Saurus, I like that, and Bone Alone. That's 1 point. With 2 points, Raven Puffles, Orion's Belt, Nebula Knights, Fox Kits, Dinosaur and real. But dinosaurs are real. Yeah. It's fine. I disagree with your name, but you still have 2 points. David Rowland, Cinder Squid, Cahill Climbers, and Betty and the Beakers. 2 points. With 3 points, Two in the Bush, The Professors and the Castaways, Spring Flowers, Lottie and the Pigeons of Power, Hassan Pfeffers, Green Forest and Proteins, CJDB, and Bentley. You all have 3 points. With 4 points, tied for second place, Ultraviolets, Trained Observers, Sacramento Kings, Herpetophilia, Buckeye 5, and Alligator Fett. With 5 points, tied for first place, sibling rivals, Los Gatos, Leo de Grants Mustai, and Argonauta. Congratulations, teams. All right. Again, we have made it to the end of round 1. And so, as Lane says, we survived the first round extinction. That's pretty good. I like that a lot. And we're going to move swiftly along to round number 2. So this one is all about Hell Creek. So an area in what is now like Montana, and where, Riley, you've spent a lot of time, including recently. How recent were you actually in sort of the Hell Creek area?
So I haven't been there super recently. I've done some field work out that way. I went to go visit the KPG boundary in southern Colorado, because if you put in, it uses the old name, but if you put in KT boundary in Google Maps, it'll take you to a place in Trinidad, Colorado, where you can go see the boundary layer. Hell Creek itself, I worked in eastern Montana a number of years ago and found a lot of cool stuff, like little mammal jaws and gar scales, tyrannosaur teeth, that sort of stuff. So it's a really amazing place.
Yeah, I like very much hope to go. I have not been to, I haven't been to Montana in probably about 5 years, but I don't think we spent much time in eastern Montana. So that might be the place that I go, just like stomping around looking for dinosaur bones. So, all right. And we will start with question number 1. And I'm going to put round 2 answer form here in the chat. Okay. So in the Hell Creek Formation area around current-day Montana, T-Rex might have been the apex predator 66 million years ago, able to devour felled dinosaurs with her massive head and teeth, or blend into the shadows at the edge of the forest during her favored hunting hours near sunrise and sunset. But there's a large herbivore that could outrun a Rex on open ground. They're shovel-beaked, walk together in herds, and their genus is named after a Canadian capital city. Name that dino. I've given you a lot of hints for this one. So if you know dinosaurs, hopefully you know this one.
I'm just imagining all the dino fans who know their genera, answering this before the question's even read. It's like, I know it. I got it.
I know that one, that shovel-beaked little guy. Yeah. So we're talking about a dinosaur that could outrun a T-Rex. How fast are we talking here? Are we talking like 20, 30 miles an hour?
In that range, there's been a lot of debate about dinosaur running speeds and what they're capable of, and it depends so much on the muscle reconstructions. Like for years, there's a debate whether even T-Rex itself could run or not. There was one study saying that if they tried to run, they'd probably trip and break their own bones, which is probably a little too extreme. That's a little bit too much of a womp kind of interpretation, but it's around that zone, but around 23, 25 miles an hour is pretty much what we're thinking of. T-Rex is big. They could run in a sense, but think about an African elephant running. It's more of a high-speed shuffle more than anything else.
Still, not an animal I necessarily want to be in the way of. I think I can run pretty fast, but I get to a top speed of 7 miles per hour at max. So that's 3 times faster than I can run at my absolute fastest. So I don't really think I want to be in a way literally any of these animals.
Yeah, I'm not a runner, so anything more than a speedy walk, it's like I'm just gonna be extinct at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll just lay down. It's fine. You guys can
Yeah.
you can just get your pickings. I'm not much of a meaty meal anyway, so go for it. All right, teams, that was question 1, and here is question 2. Riley, if you wouldn't mind reading this one.
Certainly. Tyrannosaurus rex is probably one of the most well-known dinosaurs, but there's still a surprising amount of mystery surrounding these animals. Last year, paleontologist Charles Marshall and his team did some back-of-the-envelope calculations and came up with a rough population size estimate of T-Rex for the 2 million or so years that they roamed the Earth. How many individuals did they think once lived? A, 1.5 million, B, 200 million, C, 960 million, or D, 2.5 billion?
Either way, it's a
Yeah.
lot of dinosaurs.
It is a lot. It really is. And when you think about like how long these things were around and some of the size ranges that they ranged over, even if you think of something like a Siberian or Amur tiger today and the home ranges that they have for like a modern large carnivore, and a T-Rex is many times larger than that. It's just, when you think about the space and everything else involved, it's absolutely incredible.
Tao has made a very good point that this was on a SciFri broadcast. It was. I may have, yes, I may have poached this from a segment we did about a year ago, I want to say. And it was one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite segments, which is part of the reason I brought it back up. A good question. So a few people are asking at once, all of them. This is for all time. So how many T-Rexes do they think lived? Like, one lived and then it died, that's 1. Another lived after that one, that's 2. So individuals over the however many years, 2 million or so years that they were around. So their total over 2 million years population. That's what we mean. So not at one time, but throughout their entire 2 million years that they were on Earth.
Total T-Rex.
Total T-Rex, yeah. If no matter how many it is, it's too many T-Rex at once. From the 1.5 million all the way up to the 2.5 billion, anything along that is just too many T-Rexes in my opinion. But yeah. I'm not in charge of how many T-Rexes there are, thankfully. All right, teams, we are moving on to question number 3. Paleontologists are constantly revising the list of dinosaur species. In the Hell Creek Formation, experts have named 3 dome-headed dinosaurs. Riley, you're going to have to say these for me because I can't.
Do you want me to take it from here? Yeah.
Please.
Sure. They've named Stygimoloch, Dracorex, and Pachycephalosaurus. Recently, however, paleontologists have realized that these dinosaurs are all growth stages of just one species and should have just one name. What is that name?
Thank you so much. Trivia teams know when I'm here by myself, I have to just muscle through all of the especially Latin names for animals. I consistently put them on my list knowing I will practice and I still will not be able to pronounce them. And I do my best. But now that you're here, you are the expert. I'm so glad that you did that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I think with one modification, there's a species of dinosaur called Micropachycephalosaurus, and I think it has like one of the longest names ever, like designated for an animal ever. It's like, did you really have to add that? Did we have to make it longer?
They really did. It's a little bit littler, so micro. That's amazing, actually. I feel like this happens pretty often. We had this whole debate years and years ago about Brontosaurus. Is that right? About sort of like, they were like, there is no Brontosaurus. Forget about Brontosaurus. We made a mistake. And then they were like, no, wait. Is that sort of where we are now with that conversation? They're kind of like, actually, we were kind of wrong. There is Brontosaurus. Sorry, everybody.
So it all involves like sort of what your philosophy about naming prehistoric animals is and what kind of evidence you use and when you should justify a new genus or a new species. So an analysis came out in 2015 saying that there were enough differences in skeletons that we previously called Brontosaurus to make it unique. Again, that it's not Apatosaurus, it is something different. But it's the closest relative of the other remaining Apatosaurus species. So they basically form a group that looks like this on the family tree where you have Brontosaurus and the 2 Apatosaurus species. So you could just as easily move it down one node and say, well, they're still all Apatosaurus. So it really depends on your philosophy of like how you name things and what
Yeah.
you prefer. So we can have brontosaurus if we want, but that debate is still very much ongoing.
I love that that's the answer too. It's just like we can have it if we want, and if we don't, we can decide not to. And
Mhm.
maybe when people, it feels like a little bit like what's in fashion, right? Like right now we're like, no, we must have the brontosaurus. And like 100 years from now, they might be like, why did they cling so much to the brontosaurus? They're old news. It's fine. Just call it an apatosaurus, and none of us would know, and none of us would care anymore because we would be with the dinosaurs. But I think that's so interesting. I love humans are fascinating. They're just
We
really
get weird.
fascinating.
Yeah.
We get weird. Yeah, we certainly do get weird. All right, that was question 3. And here is question 4. The Hell Creek ecosystem was home to many species of dinosaurs, large and small. The most numerous was Triceratops horridus, the great 3-horned face that is found more often than any other dinosaur in the formation. The fact that these dinosaurs grew very large also means that they've left plenty of obvious bones to find. In tons, how much did an adult Triceratops weigh? So I will give you a wiggle room here of plus or minus 1 ton, which is very kind, by the way, because a ton is 2,000 pounds. It's a lot of pounds, and so I'll be kind on this one, and so you can be off by 1 ton, and you will still get the answer right. So again, we are looking for the about average amount that an adult Triceratops weighed, and as Juliana says, a lot.
A lot. That's why they're the tops.
Exactly. That's why they're the top. That's correct. So have you seen one of these, like in the quote unquote flesh, one of these fossils?
So I haven't seen one in the ground. I found a Triceratops tooth when I was doing some
Ooh,
field work out in Hell Creek, and it's about the size of your thumbnail. So it's this animal's really
wow.
huge with all these tiny, tiny teeth. There are plenty of Triceratops skulls out there. That's the thing, that we have more skulls of almost anything else. It's actually very difficult to find a near complete Triceratops skeleton. So if you go to a museum like the American Museum of Natural History in New York, which was my favorite when I lived on the East Coast, that's actually a composite of multiple individuals. And a lot of paleontologists would headhunt, basically just take the skulls and leave the rest in the ground.
Yeah.
So even though it's this incredibly familiar animal and we have so many skulls to compare, we actually don't have all that many basically complete Triceratops skeletons. And that's the kind of irony of it. You get a lot, but only certain parts.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Eric is asking, laden or unladen?
Unladen.
This one's unladen, yeah. That's so interesting. Yeah, I knew that about fossils, that we just kind of were like, found this one, no, it goes here, we'll put it there. And the thing that I learned also about museums that I think at some point had forgotten and then relearned in my adulthood is that like the stuff on display a lot of times when it comes to dinosaurs are casts. And part of that reason is because they're just incredibly fragile. And so putting them out into like a museum is like would hurt them essentially. And so instead we make casts of them and then put those into the museums where people can sometimes even touch them, which is great. But I forgot that, and I was like, oh, it's like we're looking at like a sculpture of the bones of the dinosaur, which is already kind of a sculpture in its own way sometimes, like because fossilization is a whole other process where it's not really bone anymore. It's its own kind of new rock. And so I just like, went down a weird rabbit hole in a museum once, and I was like, oh, I feel a lot of ways about these bones. They're super weird.
There are layers, and that's the thing. It's like there are some original organic materials in there, so it's not completely turned into rock, but they are super heavy. So that's one of the ways if you go to a museum that you can tell. If you look at the skeletons and it has this like heavy like steel or like iron type armature to it, that's probably real bone. And if it looks like it's just kind of standing on its own, it's probably a fiberglass cast. So basically, if you look at the support structures, you can get an idea of which ones are like the real bones and which ones are the casts.
That is a great tip, actually. I would have never thought to look kind of at the skeleton around the skeleton, right? That's pretty cool. I feel like we're going to have a lot of eagle-eyed like museum goers now in the next couple years looking just at the stuff that's around the bones. All right, teams, that's question 4. And here is question number 5. Riley, this one's all you.
Even though experts have been searching the Hell Creek Formation for over a century, paleontologists are still finding and naming new species. Many of these new finds are of small carnivorous dinosaurs, relatives of the famous Velociraptor. In 2013, paleontologists named a new raptor dinosaur from a bone bed in Montana. What is its name?
I feel like we're getting into the real dinosaur lover knowledge here. We're I had actually not heard of this dinosaur at all. Didn't know that it was a relatively, I think I'd heard of it, but had no idea that it was a relatively recently named dinosaur. Does that happen often? Like every year are we naming 2 to 5 new dinosaurs that we find, or do they kind of happen in spurts?
Oh, even more than that. A new dinosaur is named on average of every 2 weeks.
Really?
We get about 2 new dinosaur species a month on average.
That's
and not
cool.
all of those are stable, not all of those stick around, but some of them are unquestionably new. But yeah, I mean, I think based upon the estimates of just how much rock is out there, the number of geological formations that are of the right type and of the right age and could potentially hold dinosaurs, I think the estimate is that we've only found maybe about a third of what's possibly out there. So we really are in kind of I hate kind of using the term golden age, but really kind of are. If you want to go find dinosaurs, this is the time to go out there and do it.
That's pretty cool. I feel like all of the parents who maybe were reluctant about well, how much can you really do as a paleontologist? You could do a lot. You might find a dinosaur and then they'll name it after you. So there was someone who just discovered a new cephalopod in the fossil records and named it after Biden. So, I mean, if you're an inspiring teacher or a parent, that could be you. So you really never know. All right, teams. That is the end of round 2. We've made it. Here we all are together. Here are all of the questions. So before you submit your form, if you want to take another look, this is your chance to do it. We'll give you a minute and a half, and then we will see you at the end of that minute and a half. Good luck, everybody. All right, teams, this is your last chance. If you've not submitted your forms, now is the time to do it, because at the end of now, they're going to be gone. Right now, actually. There we go. All right. So we watched the first half of that Coprolite video, and now I simply must show you the rest of it because it would be rude of me to do anything else. So if you've not submitted your forms, now's the time to do it. Otherwise, enjoy this video. We'll see you in 3.5 minutes, everybody.
Again, it's almost like you're in the field. You're searching around the slide. Oh, what is that? Clues that say these are plant cells, these are animal cells, this is a piece of bone, it's a piece of shell.
Dr. Chin and her colleagues can then start to get into the nitty-gritty.
I might do a chemical analysis of it to see what kind of mineralogy it had. You can look at organic geochemical analyses or isotopic analyses. This is a kind of a new field in studying coprolites.
And with new techniques can come new insights.
One of my colleagues, James Super, analyzed some coprolites from the Arctic. Inside, He found compounds that give us clues about how warm it was 78 million years ago above the Arctic Circle.
But of all the coprolites Dr. Chin has examined, none have provided more insights than those from western Montana's Two Medicine Formation.
I have spent many years studying these coprolites, and one thing that they revealed early on was the presence of very distinctive burrows that indicate the activity of dung beetles.
As well as the occasional snail shell. More importantly,
they were filled with tiny pieces of conifer wood.
Dr. Chin mulled over those wood fibers until she realized that the dinosaur that ate them wasn't just munching on a pine tree.
The wood had actually been rotted before the dinosaurs ingested it. We don't have modern mega herbivores like elephants making a practice of feeding on rotting wood, so that was a real surprise.
But Dr. Chin had a hunch that maybe these duck-billed dinosaurs had been snacking on something else entirely.
Invertebrates frequent rotting wood, so if those dinosaurs needed a good source of protein, they go to a rotten log, and that's a great way to find proteinaceous invertebrates.
Her hypothesis was backed up when colleagues at the Denver Museum of Natural History and Science made their own fecal find.
They found coprolites in the Kaparowitz Formation, which is the same age as a Two Medicine. They also have rotted wood inside. They also have evidence of dung beetles inside. But in addition, they have actually pieces of broken up crustaceans. They were clearly broken up, so they were ingested.
Put together, these plain lumpy rocks reveal a whole ecosystem.
We have the hadrosaurs, we have conifers, we have white rot fungi, and we have dung beetles and snails, all in this one ecosystem, and we have fossil evidence of how these guys interacted. We can't get that from simple body fossils.
Out on the prairie of western Montana, precious coprolites are waiting to be dug up. You probably won't see them displayed in a museum like fossil bones, but they're sure to provide us a spectacular glimpse into the ancient past. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, then you'll love our other science documentaries. Be sure to subscribe to our channel, then join our growing community of supporters on Patreon.
All right. I hope you enjoyed that. I think that it is a mistake to not show coprolites in museums.
Nice.
I've seen them also, though. So I don't know what's up with that, but
We need to know who the perpetrator is.
we need to know who the perpetrator is. We certainly do. I do think I've seen a couple of them, so I know that they're out there, but they just obviously they're probably not as plentiful as a charismatic skeleton, I guess. So we'll see. All right, teams. We are going to tell you the answers and then tell you how you're doing. So everyone's doing great, though. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so in the Hell Creek Formation, we asked about this specific dino that is shovel-beaked, that walks around in herds, and their genus is named after a Canadian capital city. Many of you, if you didn't know this, guessed, different Canadian capitals and provinces, which was a very good idea because I'm assuming some of you got it right anyway. It's a Edmontorosaurus. Did I say that right?
Edmontosaurus. But close, yeah.
Thank you. I was like, I know it's in there in the middle somewhere. So yes, named after Edmonton. And a lot of you guessed, let me look really quick. I did love some of the answers. I love this Alberta Venator. Great. Something should be named after that. Someone just wrote Banff, which I also think is great. I would love just it's named Banff. That's it. Yeah, Reginosaurus was also a pretty plentiful guess, which I think a very good guess. I would have put that down as well. So I feel like there is a Reginosaurus out there. Is there?
I don't think so. We just had a paper suggesting a new species of Tyrannosaurus regina, which would be like the sort of the tyrant queen, I think, but that's very much disputed.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, though. I mean, I like that name, though.
Yeah.
Question 2, we asked you how many individual T-Rexes do they think once lived in the 2 million years that these specific dinosaurs T-Rexes were alive? 2.5 billion. Too many dinosaurs. Too many T-Rexes. Don't want. I understand that's God, it's just too many. I'm just going to move swiftly along because it really, I like T-Rexes, but it upsets me to think about that many T-Rexes. Question 3, we asked about these 3 dome-headed dinosaurs and which sort of name did they consolidate all of these dinosaurs under, and it was this one, Pachycephalosaurus. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Yay! Many of you got this right. I'm assuming. So I know very little about dinosaurs. Is this a pretty, like, if you go to a museum that has dinosaurs in it, will you see Pachycephalosaurus is like on display?
You may. There seem to be more of them than there used to be. It's not. We don't have a lot of their skeleton. Usually, just have the skulls. So, like, look at like if they have a skull ball or something that just seems to be just like a big hunking head that kind of looks like a bowling ball on top.
Yeah.
Then you probably found it. So you can find them in a few, for sure.
That's great. I'm going to look out for them next time I'm around. Okay. Next question. How many tons did a T-Rex weigh? Again, I gave you lots of wiggle room for this one. It's 13 tons, everybody. So if you wrote
for
12,
Triceratops.
yes, 13 tons for a Triceratops. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if you wrote anything close to that, which is 12 or 14, I did give you the answer, so you're welcome. This is too many tons, right, Riley? It's just huge.
It is a lot of tons. It is absolutely massive, yes. There's a lot of animal to feed. So think about that in context of what Dr. Chen was talking about. Like, that is a lot of dinosaur to feed.
It's a lot of dinosaur feed. Yeah, they're just walking around and just trying to eat each other. I get it. Okay, and then in 2013, paleontologists named a new raptor dinosaur. Many of you got this one as well. You're paying attention. Is it an Achyoraptor?
A Caroraptor.
A Caroraptor. Thank you so much. Why? How is this raptor different than the other ones that it was around?
So we don't have a ton of it yet. A lot of these small dinosaurs are harder to preserve because they are so little that their bodies could be scavenged on, broken up earlier. So we mostly have just like the jaws, like parts of the skull from this particular animal. But the details of that anatomy tell us that it was something different from the other sort of raptor-like dinosaurs in that habitat. So we don't have like knowledge of like a big crest or anything like that quite yet. That's like super distinctive. It's like all down the nitty gritty. But that's part of the neat thing about this is that we're looking for like the small stuff now. Like we found most of the big stuff, but now most of the new finds are the small things that were previously overlooked because they just weren't like the showstopper museum specimen.
Yeah. I like having kind of like the here's a thing. It's not great, but it's cool. So look at it kind of stuff at museums. It's some of my favorite stuff. All right, we are going to get to the scores, but really quickly, I realized my form was being kind of funky, and so it wasn't adding up things right, and so I fixed it, and now I just have to fix the little part of the presentation that tells us all about all of those things. And it's still being funky, so I might just read to you instead of showing you the scores, everybody. All right, so I'm going to do that. I'm just going to... Sorry, I don't know why it's happening, but I will read to you who is doing well, and you can trust that that is what is happening. But part of my form, sometimes my form gets mad at me, Riley, and it just doesn't compute, but it is doing it now just in a weird way. So anyway, I'm going to read all of the scores, and I'm going to tell you how you're doing. And then we're going to move on to round 3. So the teams that are doing not so great so far, but that's okay because there's still another round. Snake River Snakes, Play-Doh Fries, Gary 1007, and Dancing Fish. No points yet, but that's okay. You're doing great. With 1 point so far, Trace Cabezas, Magnificent Manatees, Hippies, Greek God of Revelry, and Bulldogs Need Love Too. You all have 1 point. With 2 points, the Rosy Thorns, Samurai Fox, Pinchy, Munchkinhausen by Proxy, Freehold, New Jersey, Family Saurus, Bones Alone, Humphs, and Dr. Cordate with 2 points. With 3 points, Nebula Knights, Dinosaurs Aren't Real, Cahill Climbers, Sweltering Swifts, Sci-Fam, Library Scientists, Just Me McGee, and 2 in the Bush with 3 points. With 4 points, Bentley, Fox Kits, David Rowland, and Cinder Squids. With 5 points, Professor and the Castaways, Spring Flowers, Hassan Pfeffers, Raven Puffles, Ryan's Belt, and Betty and the Beakers. That's 5 points. With 6 points, Lottie and the Pigeons of Power and DB. You all have 6 points. With 7 points, tied for third place, Leo DeGrant's Must Die, Trained Observers, Buckeye 5, Alligator Fett, Green Fluorescent Proteins, and Ultraviolet. With 8 points, tied for second place, Los Gatos, Argonauta, Sacramento Kings, and Herpetophilia. And with 9 points, pulling through the lead, Sibling Rivals. So far, they have only missed 1 point. Congratulations, teams. This is going to be great. Yay. All right, so we're moving on to our last round. It's finally our last round, Riley, and we are going to be talking a little bit about dinosaurs, but this round is called After the Dinosaurs because, as you mentioned, your book features dinosaurs, but then, so the asteroid hits, things don't go well, and the dinosaurs kind of just, most of the dinosaurs, they don't continue on in our history, and it's a lot about what happens after the dinosaurs happen. Without giving away too much about what's in the round, was there like a favorite thing that you learned about the sort of age after the dinosaurs as part of writing this book?
Yeah, there were certainly some things that surprised me quite a bit about how life responded, how ecosystems like came so close, like really almost like a hair's breadth away from like collapse. But things made it through, and those organisms really set the stage for what came after. If I'm trying to think of like a single fact that I enjoyed quite a bit, it's difficult without giving something away.
I know.
I don't think I included one of these. There was a mass extinction of insects. So you have a whole bunch of insects. If you look at the leaves from like the Hell Creek Formation or similar formations, they have all this leaf damage on it. All these little like caterpillars and things that are eating on them, and beetles like mining through the leaves. And most of those forms of leaf damage disappear through the boundary, and then they come back again. So what that tells us is not that those insects were hiding, but those niches like re-evolved. The insects that survived evolved to do those things all over again. And that's part of the neat story, that you have like totally new stuff, but also like, you know what, like a leaf is a pretty good place to raise my young. I'm just going to do that. And we kind of just basically replay. Sorry, got a little excited.
No, it's okay. It's very exciting.
Yeah,
that's
by the way,
really
since
cool.
I was looking around, my kitten Strata, who's obviously of geological Strata, is wandering around somewhere in here, so she may pop up and make an appearance.
Yeah, Ryan was wondering if you have a cat or if it is instead a little. Is it a Smilodon?
Yeah, saber-toothed cat.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, she's a tabby with the attitude of a saber-toothed cat for sure. So she may be here. I'm going to try and turn my camera just slightly. Well, guess this is Hobbs.
There's a little cat.
Yeah, who's just been snoozing and snoring away as you've been doing this.
I love it. I wish that the only bad part about being the only one who's on camera is that our trivia teams can't show us their cats, and I do miss the cats and the little animals that people have. So. All right, teams, let us move on to round number 3. I am going to put the answer form in the chat for everyone who still needs it. A kind reminder to not put answers in the chat. Everyone has been great so far. No answers have been in the chat, so I'm pretty happy about that. So let's continue on with that to round number 3, question 1. 1 million years after impact, Echinoodon, is that how you say that?
Eoconodon, yes.
Ooh, Eoconodon. I like that. It's got a little bit more of like a sort of vibe to it. Eoconodon was the largest carnivorous mammal in the world. It was only about the size of a modern house cat. This small but mighty creature is a mesonachid. God, I didn't do great on the pronunciation this time.
I know. I feel like I kind of throw you into that.
No, it's okay. I wrote this question, so this is my own fault. But there were a group of mammals that are colloquially known as wolves with what particular feature? So that's the trivia question. Wolves with what? Which helped them travel along the swampy forest floors of the early Paleocene. I saw a few like images of like Eoconodon and some of its other relatives. They're like cute as heck. I just feel like there are so many like little animals that were living like just millions and millions of years ago that I'm like, I could have had that as a pet. That would have been pretty fun.
Yeah, that's what's really neat about that time period is that you have mammals and they start getting larger and they start proliferating, but they're all like the ancestors of today's mammals are there, obviously, because we're here. but the groups that were most prominent or that kind of became large and like conspicuous on the landscape are very different, and they're entirely gone now, and they're filling familiar niches but in different ways.
Yeah.
And there was just a study about these where it seems that in the million years or so following the extinction, that mammals, they got bigger quickly, but their brains didn't get bigger with the rest of their bodies. So it's basically the same size brain in much larger mammals. So they were just kind of probably, like you're saying, like I don't know how adorable such a thing would have actually been, but I would like to think that they just would have been like these love bug mammals that are not the most clever just yet, but they're certainly being more prominent in the landscape.
Yeah, and they've got the bodies to like kind of clomp around on the earth a little bit more, like just I don't know. I don't want to say with like confidence, but I do feel like a little bit like, these animals never saw the dinosaurs, so they don't know what came before them, but I do feel a little bit like they'd be like, I survived. I'm doing great. You dinosaurs can just go away.
Imagine the relief of like having these big monstrous things around, and then I don't think any creature lived on such a time frame that would have happened per se. Although there's a great comic, if you like these sorts of things, there's a comic called Paleocene. And it's just spelled like that. It's just called Paleocene. If you look up Paleocene comic, it'll come up. It's about a family of mammals that survive, that kind of remember what life was like before and trying to survive in the new world. And it's really fun. I like it.
That is so nice.
Yeah.
I do imagine a little bit like the first few years after, when like the weather was terrible, there was barely any light. And it's just like those animals might have like kind of remembered a little bit. And it's just like, oh man, like the weather's not great, but the dinosaurs aren't here anymore, and so we'll make do with what we have. Yeah. All right,
silver linings.
Yeah, exactly. This question is all you, Riley. Question number 2.
Some groups of mammals that are around us today were present during the KPG extinction and survived. One example is an animal named Purgatorius, which lived alongside T-Rex and managed to make it through the disaster into the Paleocene. Purgatorius is believed to be the earliest example of what order of mammals? A. Rodentia, B. Primates, C. Chiroptera, or D. Carnivora?
I love this name also. Like, it's got a sense of like underworldliness to it that I feel like is probably pretty indicative of what this animal was like a little bit.
Yeah, it comes from a place called the Purgatory Hills. And I love how many distinct geologic names. So we have, but there are certain site names. So you'll have a name for a particular valley, and within that valley, you'll have names for particular peaks and then particular fossil sites. So when I was in Alaska, I was on a show called Alaskan Dinosaurs. I aired on Nova earlier this year. And while I was up there filming for it, I found a trackway that was made by a horned dinosaur. And all the footprints were kind of coming up through the ground, so you're looking at the bottom of the feet.
Yeah.
And they asked me, like, well, Riley, you found it. What do you want to name it? And I said, I want to call it Cerabottoms. You can see the bottoms of the feet, and normally it's Ceratops. And that was definitely a groaner from the crew, but that has to be in the records now, that this site is now forevermore known as Cerabottoms.
I love that. That is amazing. Oh my God. Wait. That's real? That a real thing that happened?
Yes, there's a real thing that happened. It was like the last afternoon of the last day that we were filming. It's like, wait, those look like tracks. And then if you find it, you get to name it.
That's amazing. I would overthink that moment so much that I wouldn't be able to make a pun about it. And I'm so glad that you did. I'm so glad that you made that pun, because it's like you said, now it's forever in the record, and that just exists as a thing that you did. I don't know that you have to accomplish much more, Riley. You've written a lot of books, and now you've named this track area Cerabottoms. That is great.
I could just retire.
Yeah, I think you're done. I would not admonish you if you did that. I'd be like, well, she named the Triceratops, and so I mean, that is an accomplishment in and of itself. So, all right, teams, we are moving on to question number 3. After a short-lived heat pulse that rapidly killed a great deal of Earth's organisms, the survivors lived through an impact winter, where chemical compounds thrown into the atmosphere reflected a significant amount of sunlight. So very little of it made its way down to the Earth. Temperatures dropped and photosynthesis almost completely stopped. True or false? This impact winter, sorry, it says Weiner because I don't know why, but winter is believed to have lasted 10 long years. So we've got a true or false question here. Did this impact winter last 10 years? Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. Tons of coprolite, by the way. um, have you seen coprolite in the field? Have you ever like come across a thing that you were like, I think this is coprolite?
I haven't discovered any myself. It's
Mhm.
definitely on the list, but I have seen some. There was one from a carnivorous dinosaur that I saw in the Jurassic
Mm.
of Utah. So it was about like this big, and it had bone fragments all the way
Mm.
through, and that's how you could tell it was
Cool.
most likely from a carnivorous dinosaur. And that was just wild to think about, that these dinosaurs weren't even sort of breaking down that bony material all the way, that basically was
Yeah.
just going more or less straight through.
Yeah.
And that tells us something about their physiology and digestive system. So that was just weird. Just like walk over and someone picks something up, like, oh yeah, hey, coprolite, and it's just like, yeah, of course, that's absolutely what it is. And like, that's wonderful, because so often you're like, is this something? Is it not something? So when it's that clear, it's
Mhm.
always wonderful.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I can't. I I went to South Dakota. I've been to some of the like national parks out there, and I feel like in that area you could just like point, and it's like, yep, that's a fossil. And you just point in a different direction. You're like, yep, that's a fossil. That's just so amazing to me that we like even dug anywhere to find them because it just seems like there's so many of them like at surface level in so many places. But I guess the good ones are kind of hidden a little bit underground at the very least. Do you have to
Yeah,
dig?
it often varies a little bit place by
Yeah.
place. Usually look on the surface. You look for like fragments or shards of bone that then you can
Hmm.
follow and say, like, is this something coming out of the hill? But then again, sometimes you walk up to something and you know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
When I was working in Triassic rocks, I once came across just like a fossil fish, every scale in place. It's like, okay, yeah, that's easy. Put it in my notes.
Yeah.
Or another site I was at, I found a vertebra of a marine reptile called Shonisaurus, one of these sort of marine
Cool.
reptiles that looks like a shark, size of a whale. Vertebrae was like this big, so you hop out of the truck and it's just right there on the ground. So it can either be incredibly difficult to find, or just like you could trip over it and it'd be right there.
That's amazing. Oh, that's so cool. All right, we're gonna move on to question number 4. Riley, if you wouldn't mind reading this
Mm-hmm.
one for us.
Certainly. Just waiting for it to slide my screen. There we go. Like you might remember from our previous question, many avian dinosaurs, birds, survived the KPG extinction. Those that made it into the Paleocene began to diversify, including the ancestors of bird groups that are still around. Among these Paleocene birds were the first examples of gray and brown birds found only in sub-Saharan Africa today. What's the name of this group of birds? I feel like this is definitely a birder question.
Yeah. I feel like we have a lot of birders in our midst here at SciFri Trivia. We did we've done a few like bird specific one. Actually, we have another one coming up. I think in July, we're going to be doing one all about plovers.
Oh,
Um,
wonderful.
yeah, I'm really excited about that one. But yeah, we've done a few sci-fi trivias that either feature a round about birds or a whole day about birds. And that one's really tough because a lot of people know a lot about birds, and I'm not very good at finding. I'm very good at finding interesting facts, but I'm not great at finding facts that birders don't already know. And so we had a lot of people get all of the questions right, which is a good problem to have. It was a really really fun. It's been fun to play with all of the bird knowledge that exists. Um, but yeah, we're talking about a very specific kind of gray and brown bird, again, found only in sub Saharan Africa today for this one. It's not pictured here, by the way. This is not the bird we're talking about. This is a paleo artist's rendition of a bird. I still like kind of can't get over the birds with the dinosaurs with feathers look. Like
Yeah.
we just lived for so long with birds, or sorry, dinosaurs, birds, dinosaurs. But the dinosaurs from, millions of years ago not having feathers. Do you find yourself sort of like reverting back and forth between those two images of dinosaurs when you think about them?
Oh no, I love the fluff and fuzz and feathers. Like from the beginning, it's like this is so. I think I resisted at first. It's like, well, what's the real evidence here? Because I didn't understand sort of the way that we infer these things. But once I got it, it's like I want to see everything fluffy. I think dinosaurs are probably way fluffier than we currently expect. Even some of the ones that are not particularly closely related to birds, we're finding fluff and fuzz and bristles and things on. So like imagine something like we were talking about Brontosaurus or Apatosaurus before
Hmm.
with some kind of fuzz on it, and that's not unreasonable to think about. And that's what's so neat, that these things that we always thought of like scaly, very like saurian things were probably much weirder than we ever knew. So like I probably go too far in the other direction for some folks.
That's great, though. I do feel like I saw an image years ago that was like, this is maybe what people would think dogs or cats look like if they
Mhm.
didn't include the fur.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that totally changes my idea of what dinosaurs look like, because it's totally true. It's like once you take all the fur and feathers away, they look totally different. But this is probably closer to accurate than the other, images we grew up learning about.
Yeah, I mean, we call it. Somebody else coined this term. They call it the great like influfflement of dinosaurs, and like I'm certainly here for it. I love it.
Yeah. Tao is a question. We're looking for the group, not a specific bird. Yes, that is
Yes.
correct. Yeah, we're looking for a group of birds that are called what? Great question. All right, and we're going to move on to our last question of the round. Somehow we're here already. Question number 5. The various effects of the KPG extinction quickly and violently altered a great deal of Earth's ecosystems. Places that were once forests were reduced to ashes, but as life came back, some of the surviving organisms thrived in the disturbed habitats, including some plants. What event, about 100,000 years ago, describes a group of plants that thrive in disturbed ecosystems, where we see an unusually high spore abundance from these plants in the fossil record? So,
Yeah.
again, we're looking for a kind of event that is describing a group of animals that thrived in disturbed ecosystems. So I would like the name of the event, not the name of the plant alone. So we do need the name. I'm going to be a little tricksy on this one, but we do need the event that describes these kinds of plants. So,
Right. And just to clarify, it should be 100,000 years after impact. So I know the question
oh,
says
yes.
ago from present, but this will be 100,000 years after the impact. Is the name
Thank
of this
you.
event.
Yes. So, yes, not from today, but if
Yes.
you were living as a dinosaur. Thank you. Yes, yes, yes. 100 years after impact. Thank you.
Mhm.
So, yes, Eileen, it is a kind of plant, but again, we are looking for the name of that kind of event that happened where we see an unusually high spore abundance from the plants in the fossil record. We're looking for the event name. Um, Amazing. Well, we've made it to the end of the round. Riley, is there
Yeah.
anything we haven't said so far about this time, the last days of the dinosaur, or the, hundred thousands or millions of years after, that you were just so excited to write as part of this book or include as part of the book?
It was a difficult chapter to write about, but I really liked writing like what happened in the day after
Mm-hmm.
impact, because the image that I grew up with about this extinction was that you'd have these emaciated dinosaurs kind of wandering around collapsing like during the impact winter, and the assumption being like the sunlight blotted out the sun and the plants ecosystem collapse, and it kind of went on from there. But the non-avian dinosaurs probably didn't make it that long. Most life that died during this extinction was probably in the first day from this infrared pulse. Basically, all this
Mm.
debris kept falling back down. The friction created temperatures that rose up to like 500 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically, it's an oven on broil. So the air was like a broiling oven, unless you're an extremophile bacteria of some kind, or you can get underground or you can get underwater. There's no way to survive that. It was so hot that forests spontaneously burst into flames. And it was something that was very difficult to write about, because like I just introduced all these wonderful animals and now I have to do
Yeah.
this terrible thing to them. But I felt like that was such a shift in my understanding and really sets the stage for everything that follows, that I knew that that chapter was going to be especially important.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I think you're right. You're sort of like asking us to unlearn the things that we learned all the way back in maybe like first or second grade, that it was a totally different experience than maybe we had imagined, and kind of maybe in the worst direction in some ways. So that's pretty tough. Well, thank you for writing it though, because I definitely learned a lot about the day that I did not know before I read your book. So I'm glad that you did, even though I know it was pretty hard.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's something where it's like it's a necessary part of the story, and it's part
Yeah.
of what I try and lay out at the beginning is that this was terrible and it was a catastrophe. It's something that we can certainly feel sorrow about, but from that we have the literal roots of the
Yeah.
world as we know it now. And as we learned, previously, so many things tie back to this event, and our world wouldn't be the same about it. So it's one of those things, like appreciating the history of
Yeah.
it and the context that it puts our world in now.
Absolutely. All right, teams, we've made it to the end of round 3. If you have not submitted your forms and you want to look at the questions before you do, here are all of the questions. We'll give you a minute and a half. You'll enjoy some music. Good luck. All right, teams, the end of round 3 has arrived. Now is your last chance to see the questions before they go away forever, and they're gone. All right. So if you have not submitted your forms, now's the time to do it. I'm seeing them all come in right now. You're all doing great. I'm very proud of you. We made it. And so we have one more video to show before we tell you the answers. Not about coprolites anymore, but instead, actually, we're going to take a trip to LA and visit the La Brea tar pits together. So this video is a little bit longer. It's about 5 minutes. And so enjoy it. And we'll see you after I'm done scoring everybody. Have fun.
Near the heart of sunny Los Angeles, dark mysteries bubble to the surface. This is the infamous La Brea tar pits, home to the Page Museum, and resting place to thousands of prehistoric creatures, each with a tale to tell. Around 40,000 years before this area became a jungle of asphalt, the stuff was seeping out of the ground.
Maybe covered over by leaves and dirt, so the animals didn't actually know it was there, but it was very sticky, and so the animals got caught like flies on flypaper. If they were lucky, they'd die in a week or 10 days from hunger and thirst, and if they were unlucky, then in would come the saber-toothed cats and the direwolves to feed on this helpless resource, and the direwolves and the saber-toothed cats would in turn get stuck, and then down will come the vultures to feed on them, and they would get stuck. So this was a terrible way to die.
Inside the museum's fossil lab, the grim residue is washed away. It's sticky business, but even tiny details can provide clues as to what life was like during the last ice age. Take the case of Wolfgang the direwolf. Of all the giant sloths in all of the LA basin, Wolfgang went after this one, and he paid the price. But damage to his skull reveals that before he ever set foot in that fateful tar pit, Wolfgang led a hard-knock life.
He's got a pathology all the way around as if he got taken a hold of and shaken. All of this bone shows signs of infection. It kind of healed over and actually occurred quite a while before he got stuck in a tar pit.
Injuries like this would have been fatal for a loner. But this wolf was part of a pack whose tight social code protected him while he healed and allowed him to feed at kill sites. Not every creature passed away in the asphalt. This big fellow is Zed. Zed's dead, but a tar pit wasn't the culprit.
He was found in a river channel with lots of mollusks. So it looked as though he died in the stream bed.
And asphalt leached into his bones after he died. By scrutinizing his skeleton and comparing it to modern-day elephants, paleontologists have plenty of clues as to how he got there, starting with the wear on his teeth.
At the time of his death, he was about 48 to 52 years old. His vertebrae show signs of arthritis. He'd had broken ribs that had healed.
A typical injury from brawling with other mammoths.
And we could tell by looking at his tusks that in fact he actually died in the early summer, and there were no fresh breaks on his skeleton, so it looks as though he probably died from soft tissue injuries as a result of conflict during the mating season.
A lover turned fighter that probably took one too many blows. Skeletons like Zed are rare and impressive, but more and more it's the tiny specimens that provide revelations on a grand scale. Take the case of the two beetles.
We saw some traces from one of our deposits that were reminiscent of the traces left by domestic beetles. When you prepare skeletons in a museum, usually you put the carcass in a colony of domestic beetles, and the larvae eat the flesh, and you end up with a skeleton. But if you don't renew the skeletons, then they'll actually start eating the bones as well.
But not all of the traces were made by the domestic beetle.
And it turns out that many of the other traces were actually made by tenebrionid beetles.
Here's where the plot thickens.
And because the tenebrionid beetles and the domestic beetles aren't there at the same time, they're there sequentially. Now, the other interesting thing is that these beetles, the larvae, are only functional when the temperature is above 65 degrees Fahrenheit. So this enabled us to actually build up a picture of how long the bones were above the ground before they got immersed in the tar. And so there was 17 weeks of the summer where the temperature was above 60 degrees, which is not what you think about when you think about the Ice Age. The climate obviously fluctuated, and the seeps were probably only active in the warmer episodes of the last Ice Age.
And so, the cold case of how and when the tar pits claimed most of its victims just got a hot lead. There are a million more stories like these in the tar pits, just waiting to be dug up. And while the beginning is always dark, each sheds a little more light on the history of this town.
I I just love that video. It's just like, you know what we're gonna do? Noir. We're just gonna go for it. It's gonna dive in.
I love it.
Someone has a question in the chat. Would dinosaurs have experienced tar pits? What do you think, Riley?
That's a good question. So far as I know, a tar pit of the appropriate age for Mesozoic dinosaurs has not yet been found. So basically these are things that are much more recent. And a tar pit isn't always like something that traps animals. We have certain bones, like they mentioned Zed, where like they'll die in a river channel and then asphalt will come up and kind of permeate those bones. So we basically, the birds that are found at La Brea and elsewhere are dinosaurs that got trapped or covered by tar pits, but not like the likes of T-Rex so far as we know.
Yeah, maybe one of you can be the person who finds the tar pit that that we then discover with dinosaurs in it. So maybe one day. Okay, so we asked about Eoconodon and the tiny little carnivorous mammal that is kind of the size of a house cat, and they're from a group of mammals known as wolves with hooves. Wolves with hooves. We did, of course, as you probably can imagine, Riley, get a lot of webbed feet.
Hmm.
Yeah, so a lot of people guess
Yeah.
webbed feet, which makes a lot of sense. I did say that they
Yeah.
travel along swampy forests, but hooves did them a little bit better along the swampy forests, right?
Yeah, and I just love the way that that sounds together. It's like wolves with hooves. You can kind of
Yeah.
like throw a little accent to it.
I said this, so we every week at Science Fridays, like all staff meeting, we do like a what is the thing that you learned this week, and we share a few things, and that is exactly the comment I got from one of our producers, who I said like wolves with hooves, and she messaged me specifically wolves with hooves, and I was like, yeah, that made me smile. Thank you so much. So you can go into your day tomorrow with the phrase wolves with hooves, and feel really good about yourself. So. All right, question 2. We asked about the specific. So, what kind Purgatorius is believed to be the earliest example of what order of mammals? Many of you got this right. They're primates. I wish I had a little
Yeah.
picture of you here for it, but was that one of the illustrations in your book,
Yes.
Riley?
Yes, that's one of the last illustrations in the book. And that blows my mind because if you think about it, primates were already around during the extinction. Like
Hmm.
primates made it through. So primates almost got wiped out in the same extinction. This wasn't after. This is at the same time as T-Rex. So like that just it still blows my mind.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, we were there kind of in a way. Our former very far removed ancestors were there and then they made it through. So it's pretty cool. Question 3, I asked if the impact winter, true or false, believed to have lasted about 10 years. It's false because it turns out it lasted only about 3. I mean, say only, but it must have been very hard to live through about 3 years, right? And so you write in your book
Yes.
a little bit about what it was like to live through those 3 years of impact winter.
Yes, and I mean, not to get too dark about this, but given sort of staying inside during the pandemic for more than 2 years, I
Mhm,
certainly have a lot
mhm.
more empathy for the creatures that had to make it through the impact winter of 3 years. It is a long time.
It's a long time. Yeah, exactly. And we have farming still, so you really couldn't do that after this impact winter. So all right, question 4 was about these gray and brown birds that are found in sub-Saharan Africa today. You know, when I first read this question, I thought that the answer was going to be about oh gosh, those big giant birds in Africa, the ones that still look like dinosaurs. Now I'm totally blanking on the name of them. Um, but I thought that that was what the answer was going to be because I was like, oh, those look like dinosaurs. So obviously the answer must be that. But actually the answer is mouse birds. These like very beautiful little birds that now live in Africa. Um, what is so special about these? I mean, besides everything we've learned, but like, what is so
Yeah.
special about these little birds?
I just picked them because we had a recent discovery. There was a mouse bird from the Paleocene, so this is the time period that we're talking about, like right after the Cretaceous, that's found in New Mexico. So like our earliest records from North America, and they kind of had this whole history. They lived in
Yeah.
other places through the world, and now they're only found on one continent. So it's just so neat to me how like the fossil record can like add new context to
Yeah.
familiar things that we see around us now.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Shoebills was the bird I
Ah,
was
yeah,
looking
yeah.
for, by the way. Um, amazing looking birds.
Yes.
Convinced that I was like, I saw them move, and I was like, that is a dinosaur. I knew that birds were dinosaurs before, but that bird is a dinosaur. They're pretty special. All right, in question number 5, we asked about this very specific time when a group of plants, excuse me, that thrive in disturbed ecosystems. There's a unusual high amount of spores in the fossil record during this time. What is this time of abundance, but also kind of not so much abundance in some other ways? They're called fern spikes. I will be honest. I did give people points for Fern something. And so the winning, I will tell you this, the winning team did get it on the nose, and so they win the most. But I will say I did give points to people who wrote, for instance, Fern Festival. Love it.
I like it.
Fern Flourish, Fern Rebound, Fern Explosion. These are all not technically correct answers, but to me, because it didn't make a difference between who won, I decided to give anyone who wrote Fern something an extra point. My favorite, Fernageddon. It feels like a little bit of the opposite.
A little bit, yeah.
But I liked it enough that you got the point. All right, teams, we've made it. We've made it to the end. Yeah. This is where I say thank you so much. So if you like what Science Friday does, this is a great chance for you to consider a donation to our tip jar. So part of the reason that we're able to do all of this really cool stuff is because you all support us. So you can go to sciencefriday.com/donate-events, or you can use the little link that is in the description here. And you can send us a small donation. It matters less how much you give. It matters more how many people give, because that shows how many people support the things we do, like bringing Riley to the show. Speaking of which, Riley, you are going to be on Science Friday in about 2 weeks. So you're going to talk a little bit about the book. You're going to tell us a little bit more about the writing process. Don't give away too much, but like, what are you most excited about? Because you've been on our show before. You're talking about some of the other books that you've read. Why is this one like a little bit different?
I think because it's a story that hasn't really been told yet. Like, I know I did this in my own writing, where it would often be like, okay, a big chunk of space rock hits the planet. Like, of course, a mass extinction is going to happen. Yeah. And I kind of yada yada the rest of it. It's like, impact, yada yada yada, mammals take over, and there's so much more in between, and that's the story that I really love to tell, the sort of like the process, like broken down in those moments where life came back. And that's a story of resilience. This isn't just like about the loss of our favorite dinosaurs. It's about how the world came to be as it is now, and I'm really excited to talk about that.
Amazing. Well, we're really excited to listen to it. I feel like I've talked your ear off all today, but I still can't wait for that interview. So that's going to be happening on May 13th. So you can listen closely to that to hear some more cool things about Riley's book. And you can also just revel in the fact that you already know all this because you've already read the book. Because of course, everyone here is going to go out and grab your book from their local bookstores or from their local library. So, so we do have to announce the winner of tonight's trivia night. Of course, there was one team that just came out a little bit ahead of the others. 1 point put them on top. Wow. I know, it was the difference between 1 point. And so with 13 points at the end of today's trivia, Sibling Rivals, congratulations. Yay. You will be receiving a copy of Riley's new book as soon as it arrives at my house, because I ordered it earlier this week and it's still not here. So when it gets here, I will send it to you. Congratulations, team. 13 points is a lot. You know a lot about dinosaurs and you proved it tonight. So congratulations to all of the teams, by the way. All of the teams did fantastic tonight. You all, even if you didn't get any questions right, guess what? You won the award for having learned the most this evening. So thank you so much for coming. Riley, so everyone can find you on Twitter. They can follow you for more. Of course, we're going to be seeing a lot of pictures of people reading your book and sort of saying beautiful and wonderful things about it for the next few weeks. And so if today didn't entice you, those tweets will. What are you working on now? You told me the other day that you have published 10 books, and I was like, yes. Great, fantastic. Are you going to stop now? You're like, no, I've got 2 other ones coming up. But what else is happening so you're gonna kind of relax for the next few weeks, maybe a little bit, and then what's coming up next? What are you looking forward to?
Yeah, I've got a couple stories coming out tomorrow. So you might want to look at New Scientist, which is an English publication, or Smithsonian Magazine. There's some new studies coming out tomorrow that I can't say anything about yet, but awesome. They're kind of neat. And I'm starting to think about what the next book is going to be. So I'm thinking this is a little bit of a spoiler, but paleobotany. So taking a similar approach to the long history of our green planet. And I'm working on that now. So I'm hoping that's the next big thing.
Very cool. Amazing. Well, we're looking forward to it. I'm sure many people will be following along for whenever you do the next thing. So congratulations on this new book. Again, it is The Last Days of the Dinosaurs. You can find it hopefully at all of your local bookstores and soon in my hands, which will then be in the hands of our friends, Sibling Rivals from the Boston area. So Congratulations, teams. We're going to be back next week, by the way. May 4th, we're going to be doing another trivia night because it's Wednesday again, and that's when we do trivia. So hopefully we'll see a lot of you back here for another night of trivia. It will not be the same without you, Riley, but we will celebrate dinosaurs in spirit. So,
well, I'm always willing to come back for more fossil fun.
I am positive that we will have you back very soon. So thank you again, Riley. Thank you to all of the teams that arrived and played trivia with us tonight. You are what makes Science Friday Trivia the best thing that it could possibly be. So have a wonderful night for Science Friday Trivia. I'm Diana Montano. Have a lovely night, everybody. Bye-bye.